we actually only have 2 otters out here. We normally would have 4 during our feed, but in order to give them some special attention, we want to be able to split them up so that they get that one-on-one attention. So our other 2 otters are, the 2 you see here right now are Schuster and Oswald. And Schuster and Oswald both joined us here from the Monterey Bay Aquarium. They were orphaned off of the coast of California and for different reasons could not be returned to the wild. So we did partner with the Monterey Bay Aquarium to be able to provide them with a permanent home under human care. So Schuster up here, he's a little bit older. He's about 4 years old now. And next to him is Oswald over here at the end. And Oswald is a newer pup. He's only about 2 years old. So, as I mentioned before, all of our otters are rescued otters that for one reason or another could not be returned to the wild. So you may notice that the trainers have what looks like a large Q-tip in their hand, and this large Q-tip does help manage these otters. In fact, this large pole named a target pole is used for targeting. In this way, we are able to move the otters around, as I mentioned, into the back or around exhibit. And once they learn that first most basic behavior, they can learn more complex behaviors. And this is important because it keeps these otters' minds healthy. They are very smart animals, and just because they are under human care doesn't mean that they don't still have those same instincts that they would have out in the wild. So it's very important that each otter is able to get his own space. So from that point, we can also move them around the exhibit to ensure that each otter feels safe when they're eating. As I mentioned, these are male otters, and male otters are actually typically a unique population under human care. And this is because normally it's an all-female population, or just one male with those females. And that's because males are highly territorial. So it is very important that they have their own area if they need it. So as you may notice, these animals are much smaller than other marine mammals. In fact, sea otters are one of the smallest marine mammals out there. And they don't have that layer of blubber or fat that other marine mammals do to help keep them warm out in the cold water. Instead, they have a couple of special adaptations that help out with that. One of those is that they have a very fast metabolism. In fact, these little guys need to eat about 25% of their body weight every single day. To put that in perspective, a 100-pound person would probably need to eat about 100 quarter-pound cheeseburgers every single day in order to keep up with an otter. Or, to put it in an even better way, we have an otter that weighs about 65 pounds, and that otter needs to eat about 12 to 15 pounds of food every single day in order to maintain their weight and keep warm. Another great adaptation that these otters have is they have a great coat of fur, a dense coat of fur. If you were to make an OK sign with your thumb and forefinger and place it on any spot on an otter's body, you would find approximately 1 million hairs in that square inch. And that's all over their body. If you were to do the same on your own head, you'd probably find only about 700 to 1,000 hairs. So as you can imagine, that hair makes a great difference. In fact, they groom that fur and blow air between their skin and their fur, and that helps even add that layer. And that dense fur traps the oxygen to be able to create that barrier in the cold water. In fact, if you get a chance to see the otters dive for their food, you can see little bubbles floating up to the surface. And that's the air escaping as they do that. So another special adaptation that these guys have with that fur has made them very popular with fur traders. Back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, during the peak of the fur trade, otters were discovered for that great coat of fur, and they were hunted to the brink of extinction. So unfortunately, we did see a lot of populations of otters disappear. However, in the 1970s, Congress did pass the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and as I mentioned, sea otters are a class of marine mammals, so it did protect them as well. And we have seen a return of some sea otters off of some of our coasts. In fact, in Alaska, Washington, and California, there are still resident or permanent populations of sea otters along their coasts. In Russia and British Columbia, Canada, there are also populations you can see out there. Unfortunately, though, Oregon, which did used to have a resident population, hasn't seen the return of the sea otter yet. There are vacationers that do float along our coasts, but we do want to definitely see them stay one day because they have a very important impact on their ecosystem. In fact, sea otters are what is known as a keystone species, and a keystone species has a direct impact on the health of the environment. So, for an example, out in the wild, sea otters also eat sea urchins as part of their daily diet. And sea urchins eat kelp. So as you can imagine, if there aren't any sea otters around to eat those sea urchins, that population can grow out of control, and then we can see our kelp forests thinning out along the coast. And those kelp forests are very important habitat for invertebrates. In fact, those kelp forests are what you see those gray whales feeding in. So it's very important, and it's all a piece of the puzzle. So there are some things we can all do to hopefully see the return permanently of the sea otter along the Oregon coast, and to help keep our oceans healthy for future generations. And one of those things we can do is to choose paper over plastic when you're out shopping, or even better yet, if you are able to use a reusable grocery bag, you can do that as well. When you change the oil in your car, please be sure to use a hazardous waste container. It's very important that we don't get oil out into the environment. We all know it's bad, but it's especially bad for sea otters. If oil gets on their fur, they can't do that important grooming properly, and they can actually develop hypothermia because of that. And last but not least, another common thing you might have in your house is a cat. And when you get rid of the kitty litter, it's very important that you don't flush it down the toilet, and instead double bag it and throw it away. And this is because cats actually do carry a parasite, but that parasite doesn't harm cats, but it is toxic to sea otters. So if kitty litter gets out into the environment through our sewage system, it's possible it can impact sea otters and be toxic to them. So I do want to thank you all for coming out today. Your admission dollars really do go a long way. As I mentioned, these little guys do eat a lot of food, and this is just one animal in the aquarium. So I really do appreciate you coming out today. Please do join us at 11 o'clock. We're going to be doing a public feeding presentation with our president, which is over to the left here where I'm pointing. I think it's my left, your right. I always get that wrong. So go ahead and enjoy the rest of your stay at the Oregon Coast Aquarium.